Hi, I'm Johnny from ultimatepapier-mâché.com, and today I want to show you how to make a cooked flour and water paste. At least this is the way I do it. Now, there are times when I actually use the cooked flour and water paste, even though I'm lazy, and I usually use the raw flour and water paste because that one's really easy. You just pour some warm water from the tap into a bowl and add enough flour until you get the right consistency and you're done. So that's kind of my kind of papier-mâché. But there are times when you really want to use the cooked flour and water paste instead. And I'm going to show you the actual difference between the two of them after they're dried so you can see which one you'd want to use. So let's go ahead and get to this. Let's make ourselves some cooked flour and water paste. I'm going to put 1 cup of cold water in the pan and 2 tablespoons of white flour. This is plain old white wheat flour like you would make pancakes with. And then I'm going to whisk it up because I don't want any lumps at all in my paste. Now we're going to turn on the heat to about, I don't know, medium-high. I'm just going to stand here and stir it. It doesn't really take all that long, but you do need to stir it all the time or you end up with a whole bunch of lumps. You're basically making gravy. It is starting to thicken up just a little bit. You can feel bubbles trying to start right around the edges. And there we get a couple of bubbles. I usually let it go for, just a few seconds after it starts bubbling and then stop. I can't actually use it quite yet because it is really, really hot. So I'm going to take it into the studio and let it sit there for a minute and then we get to play with it. So we have our cooked paste here. It's nice and warm but no longer hot. And I made up some just regular raw flour and water paste too. It uses a little bit more flour. It's not as thin and not quite as silky, but I do use warm water from a tap, and I think that helps make the raw flour and water paste a little bit smoother. So I'm going to show you why you would choose one over the other. I normally, like I said, I normally use the raw flour and water paste when I'm using paper strips and paste, just because it's so much easier. And it sticks the paper down, which is kind of what you need. I don't have an actual project to use these on, so I'm just using these little pieces of wood. Wouldn't kill me to stir this up just a little bit more. It's got a little bit of a skin over the top of it. It's kind of irritating. I should have done that. I don't have a spoon with me, so I'll just let it go. And yes, I'm dipping. Someone will tell me I'm not supposed to, but I do anyway. I'm using this brown paper this time just so that you can see really clearly what the difference is when they're dry. So this is the cooked paste. Now let's try that stuff. Put the cooked paste over there. This is the raw paste. Now you can already tell that there's a really big difference because you can see the flour. The little pieces of flour, the little grains, I suppose you could say, of flour are suspended in the water, but they're not really connected to the water. That's not the right way to say it, but that's the way it feels to me. And that's enough to show you. We'll let those dry, and then we can see what they look like when they're done. It didn't take very long for them to dry because I only had the one layer on there, and now you can see really clearly what the difference is after the paper mache is dry. This is the cooked flour and water paste, and you can see it's clear. You can still see the brown paper. It doesn't change the color of it at all. You can see the paper through there. If you're going to be using papers that has any kind of pattern or color and you really want it to show up in your final piece instead of painting it, this is the way to go. Now, if you're not doing that, if you're just going to be painting your paper mache sculpture after it's done, there's no reason to not use the raw flour and water paste. It sticks on there just as tight. There's a little bit of texture on there because those little bits of flour kind of stick up on top of the paper, so you can feel it. You're not going to get as smooth a surface, but frankly that doesn't bother me very much. You can sand it just like wood if you want to, but if you're really looking for a super smooth surface, then stick with the cooked flour and water paste. So really the way it looks when it's dry is the only difference that I can tell between these two types of paste, other than the fact, of course, that the cooked flour and water paste takes a little bit longer to make. Now, as far as I can tell, these pastes are both equally strong or equally sticky. If you use them, the paper will stay stuck to other paper, but there are many professional paper mache people who won't use anything except the cooked paste. I don't know if that's just a matter of tradition, or if it's because they really need the final surface of their paper mache to be as smooth and as clear as possible. I really don't know. I prefer using the raw flour and water paste when I can get away with it, because it's so much easier to mix it up. Now, there are times when you wouldn't want to use either one of them, and that is if you happen to live in a really, really humid environment where mold is a really big problem. If you absolutely cannot get your paper mache item dry fast enough before mold moves in, or if you happen to live in a place where there are so many mice or crickets or other kinds of critters who like eating flour as much as we do, then you'll want to use a different kind of paste, and I would recommend the Elmer's art paste for that. It dries clear like the cooked flour and water paste, but it doesn't attract mold or mice, and so if you're living in one of those kinds of environments, then that's what you'd want to use if you need a clear paste. Otherwise, if you don't need a clear paste because you're going to be painting it anyway, go ahead and use the raw flour and water paste. If you want the color of the paper to show through, use the cooked one that we just saw in this video. Thank you so much for watching this. Be sure and watch my other videos. I've got a lot of recipes and a lot of really wonderful projects. And I should mention that you can use either one of these recipes on any of the patterns that I have for sale. These guys back here. That's all I have for you today, so go make something and then come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.